When I think about script writing, it really is intertwined with directing for me. And editing too. I really do experience the whole process as one. Stories come when ideas come. It can happen in all ways where how a story unfolds. Sometimes I'll have a character idea and I'm looking for a story to put the character. Other times I've had more an idea of story or of place or a visual, and that helps me discover the character. But every movie's different that way.
Movie making is a combination of both sort of practical decisions and storytelling decisions, like, what would be the kind of furniture you would just find in a place like this if it was a pre-furnished apartment in our minds.
It's for the same reason I often use real names in my scripts of people I know, because it's immediately a real person to me. I believe it. I know that. I know who Roger Greenberg is because I grew up with Roger Greenberg. I had deep affection for him and for that time in my life, and even though the movie had no literal connection to that, calling him Roger Greenberg made me love him, and also it made it real to me. I do take things from, ideas come from, I should say, from my own life. Philip Roth has a quote about his own writing that he would take two stones of reality and rub them together to spark the imagination. And I find that that's not, that I don't work dissimilarly. Like I said, sort of an interaction I have or an experience in my life where I will I'll write down a piece of it or something, or a detail, or and that might find its way into a story at some point. But I find that I'm not able to truly start writing a screenplay until it's a fiction. My movies aren't autobiographical, but they are personal. And what's interesting about Blue Velvet is it's very specific, but it's very generalized at the same time. Lumberton or where is that? But it seems we all know where it is, but we have no idea where it is, which is amazing. Place is a big part of it, and I'd like to know the place when I'm writing. Obviously I need to know the place, but I like to even have visual ideas of the streets, the locations, if I can, when I'm writing. Because I feel like it grounds me. It's for the same reason I often use real names in my scripts of people I know, not because I'm writing about them at all. I would never do that, but because it's immediately a real person to me. I believe it. I know that. I know who Roger Greenberg is because I grew up with Roger Greenberg. Right. He wasn't Roger Greenberg in Greenberg, but he. Because I hadn't seen him since I was like 15, but I had deep affection for him and for that time in my life, and even though the movie had no literal connection to that, calling him Roger Greenberg made me love him, and also it made it real to me.
It took a long time to find this apartment because I had definite ideas of what it should be. One thing that was very important to me was having this line here in the middle of the space. That way, when he's here talking and she's, standing over here, you have two people who can't see each other talking to each other, but we can see both of them. And it just seemed like so much of the movie at this point is this together and separate thing that's going on between them, and this could illustrate that.
Could you change it so I could take him?
It's just one night he's looking forward to it.
Movie making is a combination of both sort of practical decisions and storytelling decisions, like, what would be the kind of furniture you would just find in a place like this if it was a pre-furnished apartment in our mind.
I'll take a juice box.
The juice box initially came from the fact of, I thought, Charlie's living here alone. He doesn't have much. But what came from that is, of course, is that then she has the juice box and she ends up making her way over to this chair here and laying it down on the floor. This all leads to the final shot of the scene, which is this wide shot as he falls to the ground. And I felt like the juice box is Henry's presence in their lives and in our lives as an audience, that he's not in this scene, he's not here, but but he is there, and he's really powerless in this situation.
I don't outline or beat it out in any kind of obvious way, but I kind of find often I'm collecting things, and often I start in notebooks writing ideas, and sometimes it's the same idea rewritten. I keep thinking it's a new idea, and I keep writing it down and realizing that it's a little like Jack Nicholson in The Shining. I'm just repeating the same thing over and over. But I find in some ways it's like I'm working through it, or I guess I am. And so it's at a certain point something starts to activate, and then I feel like I'm ready to write, or to write it, and then I'll move it to the computer because it always looks more official when it's typed, and then usually it's sort of transcribing the notes in a way, and then opening them up into scenes, but this can go on for quite some time, and there are ones that don't go anywhere right away. Usually, although this is not true at the moment, usually when I'm finishing a movie, like when I was finishing the Meyerowitz stories, the editing of it, this one started to find, it's almost like color starts entering the picture or something, and I started to kind of see it and have ideas about it. That's when I approached the actors. That's when I really started writing it in earnest. And then the writing then, I don't know, maybe 6 months or something, but it feels relatively directed and faster then. But it's also years in getting to that point. And there are aspects of this movie that I have thought about for a long time and not. That I haven't known how to put them in, what the movie was or where they fit in the movie.
Welcome to Santa Barbara, Noah.
Thanks for having me.
This film, when I've seen it a couple of times now, it plays at times like a thriller. It plays at other times like a legal drama. There is romance and screwball comedy moments, and we have musical numbers. When you were writing, is that something that you were aware, that the shifting of genres?
I became aware of it. I wasn't aware of. I didn't start writing it thinking I would have those opportunities, but I did find as I was working on it in the material that there were all these, as you're saying, kind of embedded genres in it, and it was partly my job to kind of be open to them and not be afraid of it. And it was something that in shooting it we thought about too, in terms of how we wanted to shoot the movie, that we could, that certain scenes could have kind of screwball elements to them, people going in and out of doors, when she's going to serve him the papers. That is, like, on one hand, a kind of like comic, it was like an opportunity for a kind of comic set piece, but knowing at the same time that envelope is also like a bomb under a table, that the protagonist, or one of our protagonists doesn't know about, and the audience does, and that creates anxiety. That's like a great thriller setup as well. So those kinds of those opportunities, sort of afforded themselves to me as I was working on it.
But it actually, I think a lot about it. There's a lot of how I went through a period after I made 2 movies when I was quite young. I made Kicking and Screaming when I was 24, 25, and then a movie, Mr. Jealousy, when I was 27. And then I didn't make another movie till I was 34 or something, or 34, 35 with Squid and the Whale. And that period for me was a period of real struggle. And in my sort of conscious mind, I was just trying to get another movie made. I was writing things, trying to get another movie made. What I was doing unconsciously was growing up, and I felt very much like, I mean, Frances talks at some point, someone says, what do you do? And she goes, well, it's hard to describe. And they say, why? She goes, because I don't really do it. And I felt that way. I'd made 2 movies, but I didn't feel like I could call myself a filmmaker because I wasn't doing it. And I wanted to do it again, but I wasn't doing it. And it was a very hard time. And I emotionally reflected a lot on that time from my point of view. I mean, so much of Greta's in the movie too, obviously. You know, in that sort of, you know, what I guess they call quarter life crisis. That's when stories come, when ideas come. It can happen in all ways where how a story unfolds. Sometimes I'll have a character idea for, and I'm looking for a story to put the character. Movie I made, Greenberg, that Ben Stiller played, I had this sort of notion of the character, but not the story. Other times I've had more an idea of story or of place or a visual, and that helps me discover the character. But every movie's different that way. And these are all, you know, I have notebooks and things that I'll keep notes over time, and sometimes it can feel like 2 very disparate ideas, like I said, like a location and a character. Again, in the case of Greenberg, Los Angeles and that character seemed to somehow intersect in a way that gave me ideas and gave me story.
The process is cinematographer Robbie Ryan and I, by the time we're rehearsing in here, we've now shot listed the movie probably twice. But then the actors are gonna feel their way through this idea. And sometimes there's choreography that I have that they'll just say, yeah, no, it makes sense. And then other times, actually, I don't think I should stand yet, or I'd like to stand earlier, or I don't know that I would come out on that line. And then we all kind of get into it together.
I think about being married to you and that woman is a stranger to me.
When we do the close-ups, after we've been somewhat wider for most of the scene, and we go in, we have sort of 3 versions of the close. It's like here, then it's gonna here, and then it really is, you know, in here. And there's a sequence in Last Picture Show that Jeff Bridges and Timothy Bottoms are circling a car, and they start to have this argument, and he gets in closer, but he starts cutting back and forth within the same line, so it gets really kinetic. And it felt the scene wanted that for this sequence in particular, because it almost becomes them just hurling insults at each other, and it's like the train can't stop and we're just going in. But again, had to be very particularly staged and architected, because we knew what words we were going to cut on. And so I would have them do particular gestures on each line. So it wasn't just the word, it was also the movement. So he would move his head, you know, back to being a hack, and he would lean in. And so it's almost like that they're like being hurled at each other editorially.
I can't believe I have to know you forever!
Oh, you're fucking insane!
This waltz was something we spent a lot of time figuring out, and this really came out of all of the rehearsals and the blocking, which was exactly how high is the hole. When he's gonna hit it, we shot it repeatedly. So he always had to hit the same spot.
Well, I think, I mean, for artists, I think it's a hard time to work, you know, because we're so distracted, and I think, but I also think it's so important that we do, and it's, I mean, both for our own mental health, it's helpful because it takes you out of the moment, momentarily takes you out of the moment. Those wizard barking in the back, and then you know. But yeah, I would say to keep working and you know, from an artist perspective, to work as much as possible, because I think it both for self-sanity, and also we're going to need the art that comes out of this moment is going to be really important.
When I think about script writing, it really is intertwined with directing for me. And editing too. I really do experience the whole process as one, and I don't. And and I want to talk about screenwriting, but I do find a script that isn't a movie of my own somewhat useless. Like I don't think scripts, maybe some are somewhere, but I don't think they're complete things. They're by nature potential, and you know, they've been called blueprints, or you know, and some directors use them very much as just guides. That, you know, Robert Altman, you know, kind of make an entirely new movie out of the script he was given. I follow my scripts quite closely. I'm interpreting them as a director, but I'm following the lines are the lines, and the scenes are the scenes. But even so, on their own, I don't get a lot of delight out of them, I guess I should say. But the way I work is, and I edit pretty much the way I write, which is, often I sit down to write when I kind of feel like I have enough to start, and take a lot of notes, and always, and often there's a few different things that are sort of going on at once, and one thing kind of announces itself, and that when that wire, kind of like electricity, goes through that wire, I try to follow it. But once I have scenes or a beginning or something, I tend to work forward and go back and revise, and then go a little bit further and then go back and revise. So by the time I'm done with the script, it's close to being ready, which is the same way. I don't have a rough cut. I start at the beginning with my editor, Jen Lame, and we cut the movie, we go a little bit, and then we go back and we revise, same thing. So that when we're done, it doesn't mean of course we make changes throughout, but and once you see it all together, it gives you other ideas. But but it's generally in very good shape. I don't sort of throw it up there roughly, and then that I find too disheartening, I think.